Is video the only way to succeed in podcasting in 2026? The answer is not an undeniable yes. That's why I want to talk today about if video is the right spot for you, why video might not be the right spot for you, and honestly, the both and strategy that I think is definitely the first step if you think video might be for you. Let's get into it. Welcome to the More Profitable Podcast with Stacey Harris. I'm Stacey, and this is the spot to learn more about the strategies, tactics, and tools you need to build your more profitable podcast. My team and I work every day with podcasters like you to shift shows from frustrating time sucks to productive members of your sales team, because your show should be built to generate and convert leads. So let's get into it. There is this belief, I'm going to say even toxic belief, that is being spread around the internet as if it is fact when it is actually just an opinion. And that is that if your podcast is not on YouTube as a video first show, you cannot find an audience. And that audio only podcasting is dying. I want this episode to serve as a reality check for that because, yes, video is super engaging and we're going to talk about lots of reasons video can be great. But I just want us to check in. We are, you and me, business owners who create content as part of marketing our business. We are not content creators. Our business involves content. Our business is not content. And that's an important nuance that I think's getting lost when we start having any conversation about any kind of content, honestly. I mean, this could apply to podcasting, this could apply to blogging, this could apply to video content. Whatever mechanism you use, there is someone on the internet willing to tell you it's wrong and that you need to instead be doing this thing over here. And I want us to quash that today. Because this episode is not about is video right for you or why video is the wrong idea, even though everyone tells you. No, that's not what it is. What it is instead going to be is kind of a run through of the pros and cons. I want to talk about reasons why video is a great idea. I'm going to talk about why video might not be the first step you take. I also want to talk about why what I'm going to call the both and strategy here is the move as a first step. So that's what we're going to dig into today. I'm really, really excited. Before we do that, I do want to let you know something. If launching a podcast is on your Q2 to-do list, we right now have an open spot for our podcast launch accelerator. This is something we only take one client at a time. It's kind of uncommon for us to have an opening for this. And so I wanted to come in here and let you know, if you have been thinking about launching your show, if it's on your 2026 to-do list, now is the time to do it, love. Let's get it done. There's two options. You can either do it where it is just the strategy and you DIY your production, or we do have a production package. The price on this will be increasing at the end of Q1. So at the end of March, we're actually going to be raising the rate of both the standalone strategy component, but most significantly, the production upgrade. Right now, you can get your first 12 episodes planned and fully produced for $5,000. That is going to be changing at the end of Q1. And I wanted to give you plenty of notice to get booked in at those current rates. We do only work with one client at a time in our podcast launch accelerator, but as long as yours is booked for 2026 by the end of March, we'll do yours at the current rate. So reach out, let me know. I will have a link in the show notes, but if you go to uncommonlymore.com, up at the top, you'll see a button that says launch. Click that. You can submit or find a time rather to come and talk to me. You and I can sit down and make sure it's the right fit. Make sure now is the right time for you to launch your podcast, that you've got everything you need to go ahead and do that. And then we'll go ahead and launch together. We'll get you on the calendar for this year. I love these. We've had such a great time doing them over the last Oh gosh, I think we launched that at the very end of 2024. We launched the accelerator, and we launched a couple of shows with clients. We just wrapped accelerator production client and got her show launched last month. It's been so much fun doing this, and I am stoked to sit down with you and get your show launched as well. So, again, uncommonlymore.com is the place to check out the launch accelerator. And again, you can do a strategy only option or you can do it with production, and that price is going up at the end of the quarter. So, book your 2026 podcast launch with us right now so that you can get in at these current rates. All right. Set that aside. Let's get into this video thing, because especially if you're considering launching, I mean, this is one of the reasons this conversation came up today. Is it's happening. I'm getting this question a lot in two specific containers of the containers that I work with clients in, and it is the launch accelerator. People wondering if they should launch their podcast as a video podcast. And honestly, most often that question is framed as, do I have to have video to launch it? And that's really why I wanted to talk about this. And then in our podcast strategy intensives is the other place it has been coming up quite a bit. On the production side, it comes up occasionally. For the most part, we have a couple of clients who have video production. We have a couple of clients who have stayed audio only. And then we have a couple of clients in the both and stuff that we're going to talk about today. It's everywhere. It's everywhere. You're hearing about it left, right, and center. The idea that YouTube is the biggest podcast service on the planet. Netflix has integrated podcasting into their service, and there are now Netflix podcasts, which is kind of crazy to me. But this is one of the dangers of trying to apply advice to a podcast where the podcast business model is different than yours, because the podcasts you're seeing show up on Netflix are not looking to sell you a service. They're looking to sell your attention to a sponsor. That's how they're monetized. They're monetized by the fact that they've got a massive audience, and Netflix is trying desperately to hold on to subscribers like every other streaming service, right? They've got to give you a reason to stay subscribed. Well, we don't have to be producing these $100 million movies with these giant casts when you're definitely going to be here every week to listen to these two guys in a studio talk about football and or their wives. I don't know. I don't know what these guys are talking about. But when we apply that to mean we need to have video because look at these massive podcasts that do, we sometimes neglect the fact that their podcast is doing a different job than our podcast is doing. Their podcast may even have the exact same audience. Maybe every client you have, their favorite podcast in the world is Good Hang with Amy Poehler, right? Like that won an award. I mean, Amy is the first Emmy-winning podcast host, because this was the first year that award was a thing. But again, Amy and her team have a different goal than you and I have with our shows, and I think that that's the thing that is getting left out here. Most service providers are trying to build a way to attract, nurture, and convert, right? This is the engine in their marketing machine. This is not the tentpole of their media empire. And I remember years ago, I heard Gary Vaynerchuk, and I'm going to be honest, at this point in my life, there was certainly a time where I was, but at this point in my life, not a huge Gary V fan. If you've listened to the show for a while or you know me well, you probably know why. I remember at some point saying that like every business owner was a media company first. And I get it. I get where we're going with it. I get the splashiness of it in an Instagram graphic or as the hook on a TikTok. But we're not trying to build media empires. We're not trying to build content businesses. We're trying to leverage content to build our business and sell our offers. And I think in a social media and content landscape where it seems like everybody's a content creator, where it feels like anybody on the internet has to be a personal brand, we get distracted and it pulls us away from doing the thing that we're actually there to do, which is sell stuff, which is deliver our service and improve the experience or outcome or whatever for the people who we work with. And when we do that, we end up in a whole mess of things. I mean, for those of us who are, presenting to this world as women, that means even more effort and work goes into our content uh, than maybe everybody else's does, right? Because we have things like sort of the camera ready tax, right? The right outfit, the right lighting, the beautiful makeup, the freshly blown out hair, all of that stuff. And guess what? More often than not, it leads to never feeling like your return is as high as your cost, right? You're not getting out what you're putting in, and we're going to talk about that today. It leads to a lot of overwhelm, which is like a fast path to the pod fade, as we all know. And so I want to sort of start here by busting a few myths with a little bit of data, right? Let's add some fact to our feelings because it feels like the only way we can be successful is a video first piece of content. And maybe, yeah, we're still going to rip the audio and we're still going to put it out that way. And so, like, I'm still available to, for the podcast to be consumed audio only, but I'm building it video first. Well, 53% of all podcast listeners are still preferring to consume pure audio. And that is from Edison Research last year. And so we're still seeing, and I want you to think about your audience as I'm saying this, because I'm willing to bet that 70, 80, 90, 100% of your audience falls in that 53%. Because for me, when I ask people where they're listening to the show from, when I'm in conversation with people on sales calls and they're talking to me about listening to the show, they're talking about listening to me while they're on the treadmill, while they're walking in the neighborhood, while they're dropping the kids off at school or picking somebody up from practice or doing the dishes or, whatever it is. But I am a secondary activity. I'm riding shotgun with them in their life. They are not sitting down and looking at a screen and paying exclusive attention to me. We're not even doing that for TV shows and movies. I don't know what makes us think we're going to do that for a podcast. The whole second screen thing is a thing for a reason. And when we talk about a podcast, we need to make sure that our audience is one of those 47% of people who are like, oh yeah, give me video or give me death. That was a little dramatic, but you're with me. Uh, the reality is, and I talk to my audience regularly, and so I'm guessing you're gonna raise your hand and be like, this is one of me. But 9 out of 10 times, people are telling me, yeah, it's audio only. Even the folks that do listen to this podcast on YouTube, because it does distribute through YouTube, you do not have to be video first to distribute through YouTube. You see an episode graphic and you hear the show, but they're throwing me up on an iPad in the kitchen while they're doing dishes. They're, listening to that on sort of their TV in their office as they do something else. Even those who are consuming the show on YouTube are doing it as a secondary experience. And so why am I going through the push of creating video when maybe my audience isn't even interested? In addition to that, the goal of our shows, you and I's, is conversion, right? We are educating someone into being the best possible client so that they can get the best possible result, right? So that means nurturing them in a way that they're educated on what their problem is so that they can actually identify their solution, giving them the information they need to identify that we are that solution, and then training them to be the best client we can be by giving them the information they need to have before they work with us so that they can get the best results most quickly. That means keeping people in the show. That means retaining your listeners. Well, according to some stats that I read, audio completion rates are night and day difference over video retention rates. You often see massive video retention rates after 4 or 5 minutes. I see with our podcasts, on average, our clients have 85-90% completion rates for their podcasts. Now, we do absolutely have clients who have had episodes that have had 60 or 70%. We also have clients, and this show is a great example of it. I've got episodes where I've got 110% completion rate because I've got people listening to it multiple times. That's often what the completion rate looks like, by the way, on our August series, the podcast housekeeping series, because people are listening to it more than one time because they're doing the stuff, right? They're taking the action. What I want you to be thinking about is, do you care that they see your show and click on it? Or do you care that they listen and retain the information and then do something with it? Right? So that's all sort of listener centric, which is first because it is important. But I want to sort of go back to that sort of like the pink tax of video based podcasting, which is like just part of the cost gap, right? It's going to take me much longer to get ready and to prep and to get myself in sort of video ready status than it's going to take me to sit down and record this. Video batching is a lot more difficult than audio batching because I'm going to be real with you, love. I am not sitting here in full makeup and a fresh blowout and my cutest outfit. I am wearing some of my favorite coziest linen pants. I have a regular schmegular tee on. My hair is fully up in a little top knot on the top of my hair, on the top of my head rather, because that's what works best for the headphones on my head. And I have not one stitch of makeup on, largely because when I'm done batching, then I'm going to go get in the shower. That's just where it lined up today. This is an early morning recording session for us. That's not an option when I'm doing video. That's just part of the cost, right? That's just the upfront cost. Now, let's talk about equipment. Let's talk about gear. Let's talk about post-production costs. According to the Podcast Marketing Academy, there is a 77% increase on average for production costs for video versus audio. And that's production. And that's going to vary largely depending on what's available. I've got a friend of mine who sort of biz besties, right? We sit down, we strategize together, we bounce ideas off of each other. We've been in masterminds together. We've been friends for, oh goodness, 10 years now. And I adore her. She's one of my favorite people on the planet. She's one of the people I trust most on the planet. And we've been talking about, if I really went video first and started selling video production above all, because we do offer video production. Like I said, we have video first shows, we have audio first shows, and we have sort of both and shows. And, one of the things we talked about last year as we were going into this year was like, how can I focus on selling the video side of our services better? Because everybody wants video. And my honest answer to her was, and even when I said to her, I was like, well, this isn't something I'd say publicly. But now I'm going to say it publicly because I think it's important. Not all of us are well equipped to do a video first show. And I'm not in like a you've got a face for radio kind of way. But our expectations do not match our budget. If you want to be face to camera solo in Riverside or Zoom or just into your webcam and recording in whatever platform, but just recording one webcam in your face, it's not going to be a super interesting video. You cannot expect a sort of traditional studio I'm going to go back to Amy Poehler and Good Hang. There's a couple of cameras there. There's a guest. There's, you know what I mean? There's the ability for me to move things and frame things different, and that buys me room in the edit. That buys me room from like getting the frame to move so that we can hold interest. There is so much there that is not available when it's you and your webcam to hold interest, to try and retain that viewership, like we were talking about. Video, one of the reasons that video doesn't necessarily retain as well is because I'm just sitting here staring at you, staring at me, talking at me. Not super interesting to watch. My phone is going to be out in a hurry. My Instagram is going to be opened even faster. Like on the way up, the Instagram app just opens. And now I'm not paying attention to you. And so when you're looking at the cost of this being, according to this Podcast Marketing Academy, 77% higher, is it bringing you 77% more leads? If your show's not already converting listeners as an audio only podcast, adding video isn't going to be what gets you conversions. With that said, I want to also say there are some shows where video makes sense. I would love, 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 love to see more folks in the systems and operation spaces doing video. Doing video tours of their favorite tools. By the way, not only would this get clients, but it would be killer affiliate revenue. And there are a lot of examples of this being done well already. But there are also a lot of people leaving money on the table with with an audio first podcast. There's also a lot of people leaving money on the table with an audio first podcast where they're like talking about the idea of something instead of showing that something. Another great example is I found a show recently by a podcaster who works with makers. So they are an artisan. They built an incredible business. They have now they still have their maker business, but they've also moved into sort of coaching and consulting in that space. And they have an audio only show where they talk about things frequently where visuals would be helpful. They're talking about being at a craft fair or a market of some kind, and they're talking about booth layout, seeing what booth layouts are great, like doing sort of like listener submissions of, show us photos of your booth, and we sort of audit it in the course of an episode. That would be a great visual show. That's where it does make sense. Another great example is a web designer or a web consultant. Show me what works. Show me what doesn't work. If you're going to go all in on video, have a reason for that video to be there. Because then, honestly, you can get away with your face on camera. The whole thing is a webcam. Heck, I'd watch basically a Loom video of that show where you're showing me the thing you're talking about and your face is sort of down in the corner. There are a lot of options when it makes sense, when the visual element is supportive to your education, to your nurturing, to your converting of that audience. That's where that investment increase is likely to lead to an increase in your sales. Because now we're meeting them a different way. We're meeting them with the visuals they need to see to make a decision. And this comes down to a thing that we're going to be talking about a lot in this year, which is who is your listener? More importantly, who is your client? And are they the same people? What does your client need to say yes? This is the question I ask in maybe every call I have with a client. Podcast strategy intensive, podcast launch accelerator, our quarterly production calls. From time to time, I'll sell sort of 1 hour strategy session kind of calls. And always, 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 I go, right, what do they need to know to make a decision? That's your content. I'm just giving this away now. Just that is it. What they need to know to make a decision is the thing you need to tell them. To know if you should be doing video, extend that question by one and say, does it make sense for me to represent those questions or the answer to those questions visually? And if it doesn't, then no, not right now. I'm not saying never. I'm not saying you have to have that element for a video podcast to make sense. But for me to be running full speed into it, yeah, it's going to need a visual element. I don't need a visual element here. This podcast is staying audio only. Here is where I could see that changing. And here's where we have done this with a couple of clients where, again, that visual element is unnecessary, but they really want a visual show, right? They really want to bring video in. It is important to them and their positioning and a larger sort of brand development and thought leadership positioning they're doing. They are speakers or whatever the thing may be. They want video. A great first step, a great way to start testing this is the both and. And this is a thing we do with a couple of clients. They record their show audio and visual. So most frequently they do this in Riverside FM. I love Riverside FM for recording guests, but it's a great way to record solo and get a good high quality video and audio and all of that stuff together. So they'll record it face to camera using their webcam or an external camera, whatever it is, and they'll record the podcast. We then edit and distribute that show audio first. But we take the video and we snip that into their short form video content for social so that they get reels, TikToks, YouTube shorts, videos for LinkedIn. They get that video content that they can use to promote their podcast, but it doesn't have to be at the same sort of like full video production quality that shooting videos would need to be. Also, they can keep their 25, 35-minute audio podcast that is retaining listeners, but will not retain a video audience. Because maybe they've tested it. But their short form content has absolutely worked to extend their reach, to grow their following, to grow their email list, and to grow their podcast. It's been a great way to drive the listenership. And honestly, I find that for most of the people we work with, and so maybe this feels true for you too, the interest in video is actually not about being on YouTube and having a video for a show. It is about having that short form stuff without having to record it separately. And I get that. Because I want short form video content. I don't want another content task on my to-do list, on my calendar, on my brain. And so, as a way to additionally leverage the thing they're already doing, they added a second way of recording it. In some cases, we have clients who DIY that. And in some cases, we do that. They'll give us the video and they sort of have a short form add-on on their production contract. And we create those videos for them and they can rock and roll and they use them to promote their show. We also have folks who use them just as short form content. Like they won't even use it to necessarily like drive traffic to the podcast offer or to the podcast as a whole. They're using it to drive sales. They're using it to drive engagement. They're using it for a whole host of things. Again, they actually just want video on social. They don't actually want a video-based podcast, but we can use that podcast recording time to also record that short form stuff because it can get pulled right out. So that's a really great way to start. If we've gotten to this point in the episode and you're like, I know, but I really want video somehow, start there. Because it's a really good first step. It's a really good proof of concept. And you don't need the full production rigmarole to get stuff for short form that is absolutely a good, solid, minimum viable product. You also eliminate the big increase in your post-production costs while keeping that face-to-face connection point on social that you want. All right? The time to go full video, when do you sort of step from this both and into, yep, I'm doing a video for a show, again comes back to, is that visual element important and or helpful? And for sure, you know that your podcast content works. you know you can convert in this format, not as a way to try and make your show convert better. Adding video will not fix a broken podcast. It can expand or enhance an effective podcast, but it will not fix a broken one. Adding video, adding format, adding more episodes, increasing your frequency, none of that is going to impact your results if the foundational strategy is not good. That's got to be where your attention is first. All right? I want to give you permission right now to say video's not for me this year. Or, hey, I do want to experiment with it. Let me do this both and. Or maybe you got to the end here and you're like, yeah, Stace, I think video would be a great idea. I want to do it. Then do it. But now you're stepping into it, making an educated decision, making an informed decision, and knowing why video is relevant for you. Because too many of us are jumping into the commitment and cost of video without knowing why we're doing it. Or worse, and yes, I do mean it when I say worse, we're doing it trying to fix a problem it won't fix. Okay? If you are not sure what the right option is for you, that's where a call with me really helps. Okay? So if you're looking at production, if you're looking to launch and you're not sure if video is the component, book a call with me. Submit an application, let's work together and figure out where you need to wait or jump right in right now. All right? Uncommonlymore.com is the best place to do that. I will see you right back here next week. Thanks so much for listening to the show. Remember that content consumption does not make changes. So commit to doing something from today's episode. Maybe it's taking action on what we talked about. Maybe it's reaching out to me and learning more about podcast strategy intensives or what podcast production looks like with our team. All of that is over at uncommonlymore.com. And if you haven't yet signed up for the podcast newsroom, I want to remind you that is a great next step. If you're not really sure what comes next, hang out over there. Get those exclusive private episodes. That's over at podcastnewsroom.com. And the last favor I will ask, because social proof is endlessly important for sure, is to leave a rating or review for the show. If you go to ratethispodcast.com/more, that's the easiest way to do it. But I would love to hear what you thought of the show, what you think of the show, and if the show has been helpful for you. I can't wait to chat with you. So this is just the start of the conversation. Reach out so we can keep it going. Talk soon.